So I'm Amanda Thebe. I'm going to try again. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition coach, and I've been doing this for nearly 3 decades. I think I was telling everyone it's been 20 years, but I've just turned 50 and I started when I was 20. So there you go. I need to learn how to do math better. Anyway, and I'm also the author of Menopocalypse, How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. And I became aware when I wrote the book of all these other fabulous books out there, and I just thought it would be a great idea to get everybody here and listen to all of these great stories. And my main aim is to raise awareness and promote knowledge about menopause, and to give you the tools to make successful choices about your health, which is something that a lot of women don't have the option to do. I believe knowledge is power. And this week I am joined by Vicky Allan and Kaye Adams. So welcome to the show, both of you ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm
going to do a little quick introduction about both ladies, and then we're going to get stuck in. So Vicky Allan, I'm excited to hear about the end part of this bio, Vicky, by the way. Vicky Allan is an award-winning journalist and author and a staff writer for the Herald. My husband was super excited about that. He's a Glaswegian.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Someone who reads the paper.
Somebody who reads the paper. Her work has appeared in many UK national papers. She is a keen wild swimmer. Is that like a naked thing or no? No.
Well, occasionally naked perhaps, but mostly just, yeah, cold.
Cold, yeah, the cold water thing is in at the moment, isn't it? And she's an advocate, a passionate advocate for time spent in nature and the outdoors and midlife activity. Her books include Still Hot, which we're going to speak about today, Taking the Plunge, and For the Love of Trees. And her novel Stray is currently being adapted as a feature film, which I think is like so cool. And it's about a cat that gets in the way of a relationship. Is that right?
That is right. I wrote it a very long time ago. So it's just like one of those things like from my past that I keep thinking it looks on the verge of happening, hopefully this time.
Yeah, oh, fingers crossed. That's very cool, very cool. So welcome, Vicky. And now on to Kaye Adams, who you may recognize from Loose Women. Kaye Adams is an award-winning TV and radio presenter and journalist. My mum was excited that you were coming on. I don't get to see the show, of course. I'm actually in Texas at the moment. Wow. And Kaye also hosts the Kaye Adams Programme, a daily news and current affairs show on BBC Radio Scotland. So welcome, ladies. I'm glad you're both here.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be with you.
That's enough of me talking. People didn't come here to listen to me gab on, and I can, right? So I'm going to try and shush a little bit. And I thought we'd start by asking you both, like, how did you both meet? Because I'm interested in that, and I know we all like a little bit of gossip on here, so.
Yeah, well, it was actually a cat that nearly got in the way of our relationship. I'm kidding, Vicky, well, there you go.
Or perhaps a dog.
Perhaps a dog. Well, it was one of those kind of coffees. I mean, you know, Scotland is a bit of a village. Glasgow is even more of a village. So Vicky's over in Edinburgh. So we got together to speak about wild swimming originally, didn't we, Vicky? Because I am utterly fascinated by the concept of anyone in Scotland who would want to leap into the coldest of water in the middle of winter, even with a wetsuit on. But Vicky absolutely loves it. And it was that classic thing that one thing led to another. And I said, what is it about menopausal women and jumping into cold water? Because it just seems to be a real thing.
And it's a big thing at the moment, isn't it, Kaye? Like, it's everywhere. Yeah,
it's huge. Yeah. And Vicky hasn't yet tempted me into the cold water.
Yeah, but I'm still trying. I'm still trying, aren't I?
No.
I think
then one thing led to another, and we started talking about the menopause and, you know, the fact that there is now much more of a public conversation about it. But we kind of thought, Vicky, didn't we? We tend to talk in terms of the menopause, and we wanted to try and have a book that reflected the diversity of experience of women, because, you know, we all go through the menopause, but it's very different for all of us. And I think that was our starting point, wasn't it, Vicky?
Yeah, I mean, because even between us, we knew so many people with so many vastly different experiences, even just the two of us, obviously. But and also just I felt like I think I had it quite early, like you did, relatively early, Amanda.
Yes, I was like 48.
I'm now 50.
Yeah,
just 50. And so I felt like I'd not heard all those different stories as I was coming into it. But the incredible breadth that is out there of experience, I had no idea of. And we all don't know all these different symptoms and all these different ways they can integrate with your life.
Yeah, it's not just about the symptoms. I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, people think of menopause and they think of like hot flashes and maybe a few symptoms, but we know that it actually impacts our whole life. I personally, I felt like it impacted the relationships with my children and my husband and my social circle as I withdrew from, life. And I'm curious how, like, writing the book and also how your menopausal experiences sort of changed your lives. What were there any sort of like light bulb moments that made you think, oh my God? Yeah.
Do you want to go, Kaye?
Well, interestingly, and again, I have had a bit of an epiphany, if you like, in terms of talking about the menopause, because I was one of those people that I didn't feel that I had particularly dramatic symptoms. I thought that I was one of the people who'd got off quite lucky with the menopause. And speaking to many friends, and I do this program called Loose Women, for those of you who don't know, it's a daytime show, women talking. So it's a kind of hot topic in front of and behind the scenes. And I was aware of other of my friends who had a much harder time than me. And so I just thought, well, I shan't really be talking about this because I'm not having a particularly hard time. I'm all right. Also, there was other stuff going on in my life in terms of my parents getting very ill within a fairly short period of time, and teenage daughters. And there was other stuff going on that I thought was more likely to be making me feel a bit rubbish. And I didn't make the link with the menopause. And it was only through conversation that I perhaps realized that the sort of rising anxiety that I was feeling, the sort of, not depression, I would never describe it as depression, but just lack of kind of great joy, that I was going through the motions, just going through the motions. And because of the stuff that was happening in my life, I thought, well, that makes sense. But through conversations with other people, I think I realize now that actually it wasn't just that, and the menopause was flattening me. And that was a bit of a sort of eye-opener for me. So going from being a menopause denier, which I kind of was, I started to explore it. And I'm actually quite a private person for somebody who's on television. I prefer asking questions than answering them. But I just got to a point that I thought, actually, I think we should be talking about this, because I was just having too many conversations with women who were saying, I think I've got early dementia. I just don't feel myself. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm snappy. Things aren't going well in my relationship. Just were feeling subpar. And that, went right down. And why wouldn't you talk about that? So I had a little bit of an epiphany. So I know that's kind of a bit tangential, but that's the main experience of my menopause, I would say.
What about you, Vicky?
Yeah, so I sort of crashed into it when I was I was 45, and my brother just passed away, so I was sort of reeling from that, and I just was swept away by this grief. But at the same time, over the year, I realized, hang on, I haven't had a period for months, and then another few months would pass, and I basically spoke to my mum and dad, and they were like, do you think you might be pregnant? And I said, well, I don't think so. And also I started to have the other symptoms. And I actually do remember Googling, can grief cause the menopause? Like, because it was all, I just felt like, why has this happened now? I felt it was too early, which I know that you obviously felt, and that it couldn't possibly have already arrived for me just like that. And so that's 5 years ago. And definitely I felt that because my peer group wasn't experiencing it at the same time as me, or it didn't feel like it, that it took quite a bit of breaking through the conversation. It was the older women sometimes at parties that I'd get a bit of conversation with about it. But for the most part, I wasn't feeling like I was getting information or stories or sharing without really putting myself out there.
And so that's a really great lead into my next question, because I went through the same thing myself. I had more of a Vicky experience than a Kaye experience. You know, it was a bit of a sledgehammer perimenopause for me. But I did feel the worst part for me was isolation, because I was on the outside this fitness professional who had all of her shit together, and then inside I was privately crumbling, and I couldn't speak to people like that. And part of it was because I think I felt like I was failing, you know, that I didn't have it all together, and why not? Like, I was doing everything right, so what was going on? Also, the lack of information from the doctors didn't help, right? They couldn't help me, or they didn't recognize, you know, the usual story that we hear in perimenopause. And so, like, I never spoke to any of my friends about it, because I just felt absolutely horrified at the way my body was feeling. And it was like Kaye was saying, I didn't recognize myself, but I didn't know it was part of perimenopause. And so how do you think that as women we change that narrative? I mean, you've written this book about women's stories, but like, how do we just make this part of the conversation? How do we, when we're feeling tearful, like somebody else is in there, when we don't recognize ourselves, when we're feeling flat, how do we like have that conversation and be prepared to open up and be vulnerable when we've literally been programmed to just get on with it? Like, how do we change that whole narrative?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, situations like this help. There are a growing number of books, of which ours is one, and we would love to think that, you know, it kind of adds to that conversation. But equally, we're delighted that it's one of a growing number, because I think that is really important, that we start to kind of join up the dots. And also, maybe it's just a recognition that we can't necessarily fix it. You know, I mean, obviously, certain women will decide to either look at HRT, or, I mean, in our book, we've got women who've taken up powerlifting, who've taken up ultra running, you know, who've done all sorts of different things to help them manage their symptoms. But, you know, sometimes you can't fix stuff, but recognizing that we have a common experience, which will be different for all of us, but it kind of brings us together, brings an enormous feeling of relief. And feeling that you're not alone, feeling that you're not weird, feeling that you're not losing it, you're going through a natural process that all women, if they're fortunate enough to get to this age, will go through. Just, I don't know, gives me a feeling of just feeling a bit more centered and able to deal with it, rather than being on the fringes. So we've got to keep talking about it. It's interesting, Vicky, you and I were having this discussion. You know, we got a lot of really favorable reviews for our book, which is really, really lovely. But we got a couple, one from a younger journalist and one from maybe a journalist in her mid to late 50s. And it was, why have they got to keep banging on about this stuff? I mean, for God's sake, we all have it.
Don't they call it like a menomone or something?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was basically, shut up, women. You know, it's entirely natural. Just get on with it. And I think we've really got to push back against that, you know, because if it's making significant numbers of women feel crap and rubbish about themselves and less able to enjoy their lives, and then also when you start to look at, you know, women's experience in the workplace, there's some really startling statistics about women who don't progress in the workplace the way that they should, because they're either embarrassed or they feel they're not coping at a particular time, and so they kind of like fade away, or they don't feel it's a very tolerant atmosphere, and so they don't put themselves forward. You know, then it is really having an impact on women's life chances as well as their life experience. So, you know, this is important. And I think we should say, no, I'm not banging on about the menopause. This is a health issue. And it's a very complex health issue, which absolutely can be managed in a positive way, but I'm not going to shut up about it.
Yeah, and I think it should be a really normal aspect of conversation, like all the different phases that we go through as women. It should be part of the conversation, and also it should be joined up. You know, young women girls should be, and boys should be, learning about the whole passage of women's sort of journey through their hormones and their reproductive system, the whole fertility journey. They should learn it all, and this is part of it. We can't just pop this bit off at the end.
I'm a big, my favorite thing to say is like, knowledge is power. Education equals choice, right? So as soon as we have these open conversations, it's fantastic. I know the UK have done a fantastic job with the Make Menopause Matter campaign, and they now have it in the school curriculum, which I love. It's not going to happen in the US for a very long time because it's just a completely different ball game, and there's more hurdles.
Why not, Amanda? Why not?
More hurdles to jump. I just think it's going to take a lot longer. The way the government's set up, the way the educational departments, it's just harder to break. But, you know, there's plenty of people over here trying to make that happen. So I think it's just a case of banging that drum continually and just, you know, trying to raise awareness. And I think that, like you were saying, these type of conversations really matter. If we have got this gap in this knowledge base, we're doing women a complete disservice. And so we have to right that wrong however we can. And I think every woman can make a small difference. I know that I had a conversation with my mother and my niece and my sister-in-law, and my niece was a teenager and horrified and said, I can't believe this is going to happen. Why don't they tell us about this in school? You know, and my mum said, well, we weren't supposed to talk about it. That's why. And so I think there's, you know, it's just, there's a generational thing happening as well. I think in the US, there's a patriarchal hierarchy there that we have to fight through. I'm sure my US friends will agree with me. So, you know.
But I mean, as Vicky says, you have to complete the circle. And I hadn't particularly thought about it before, but, you know, I've got 2 young daughters, and there's an absolute expectation now that in school, they will learn about basic biology, and they will learn about their periods and their reproductive cycle, etc. I mean, it would be seen now as a dereliction of duty if schools did not inform young people, boys and girls, of that, because, you know, it's not that long ago. And I mean, I've certainly got older friends who will say that they started their period and they saw blood and they thought they were dying. You know, nobody had had the conversation with them, and they were terrified. I mean, we've still got people who've got that experience, which kind of feels, have we really? It's a bit medieval, but it's not. So we've moved past that. We think that's unacceptable. How ludicrous that you would allow, you know, a young girl to feel that. And yet we don't tell them it comes to an end. I mean, I've got a 13-year-old, and actually she was starting her period, I think, as I was going into menopause. We kind of had a conversation about it. I'm laughing because she's a bit of a wag. And, you know, she said to me, don't you get periods anymore? And I said, no. And I explained about menopause and stuff. And she was genuinely taken aback because, of course, she was all locked up in the conversation about her period starting. Nobody had ever mentioned, I hadn't mentioned, that it comes to an end, that it is a cycle. And I thought, what a ridiculous, you know, aberration that is.
I also think that it's quite difficult and tangible to actually imagine that happening. I mean, even myself in my 30s, the idea that I was going to go through menopause was like almost, well, that's not going to happen for ages. It doesn't feel real or even appropriate to talk about now. And yet we realize now, as women going through it and learning everything we've learned about it, that we have a duty to inform the next generation. And I think that that's where we come into play. They shouldn't be coming into it as blindsided as many women are now.
Yeah, and actually, I'm just looking at Tracy's comment there. I don't know where Tracy is. Hi, Tracy. Saying you've got 2 daughters too, and they only learned that the menopause means that your periods come to an end. Now they have front row to the roller coaster. But we have to tell them more than just, oh, and your periods come to an end. You know, we have to have a broader conversation about what that actually means and what impact that potentially can have.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you can just think it's the end of fertility and that's it, and that it's not like the massive shakeup that it is to all your body and how dependent it is on all the different hormones for everything.
Exactly. And then even in Kaye's case where you didn't have hold on, my internet's gone unstable again. Can you hear me still?
But what does it mean?
Okay, I'm just back. Sorry, my internet went unstable. Going back to Kaye's point, you didn't have a particularly bad time, but what we do know is that when women are postmenopausal, even if they didn't have a particularly traumatic perimenopause, I keep saying it like that for me because it was, we're then open to health issues that the protective element of estrogen sort of like opens us up to. You know, when the estrogen falls and we know that we really need to be proactive with our health, that's a big thing I learned through the whole experience. And I felt like I had a good understanding of the human body as well. So yeah, we just need to keep banging on. So let's just move on a little bit and talk more about the book, right? Because we're doing a Meno whinge here, and I love it. But I want to let's talk about the book.
So positive.
That's what I was going to do. Let's just pivot, because that's the word of 2021, isn't it? We're pivoting all the time. So let's talk about the book. So you have 42 stories in there so there's going to be a huge range of different like experiences there. Like what was the most like impactful or positive story that you both like read when you interviewed women?
Well, Vicky, you say, because you had much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say that's quite interesting, because actually the most impactful interviews were not the most positive. I mean, it was like Jane Lewis talking about vaginal atrophy, which, you know, it's like, I'd not actually, because I'm not that far down that myself yet, you know, maybe a little bit of thinning, or, you know, it just hasn't really impacted me to that degree yet. I was just like, wow, this is something we've really got to talk about so much more. But yes, in terms of positive stories, there's so many kind of inspire, you know, I think the whole process of interviewing that many women and seeing the way they sort of, the journey was difficult, but they got to the other end of it and they were a different self. They become this different self that, you know, that to begin, and when I started doing the interviews, I was quite gloomy about it, actually. I was just feeling like it was beginnings of COVID. I felt like the whole world was sort of a little bit sort of menopausal feeling or something. And then as I did the interviews, gradually I started to see these women who'd reframed their lives. And there's very many of them. I really liked Tracy Cox. That was one of my favorites, just talking about great sex at 50. And
that can happen.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah. Well, no, but what's really interesting is that she's a, I don't know if you've all heard of her. Expert, and she was basically kind of highly sexed all the way through her life, but she did have her own libido drop off a cliff, and I like that kind of honesty about that. But you know, she really was sort of honest also about the hard work that you'd have to do to continue to have great sex if you wanted it. And you know, I definitely myself, I felt that libido drop. So you know, I'm with you, Amanda, when you're saying that. But yeah, positive stories. I don't know, Kate, what would you say? I mean, it is a positive book.
It's entirely a positive book, I think. And one of the things that it was your idea, Vicky, and I thought it was a brilliant idea, just to sort of categorize people very, very broadly into different sections. So we've got rage, anxiety, which doesn't sound positive, but then freedom, desire. I'm trying to think, you've got the book in front of you. Not that's to say people could be neatly put into one little pocket, but it's quite nice just when you look at the contents and you suddenly see the spectrum of emotions that seem quite familiar, and you think, well, I was a lot that, I wasn't very much that, but oh, there was somebody that, you know, it's quite good just initially to be able to do that. Baroness Saida Warsi, who sits in the House of Lords, incredibly capable woman.
Could you say that name again? That was quite the name.
Baroness Saida Warsi. She's a Conservative peer in the House of Lords, and she's a very impressive woman, isn't she?
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
She's a very high pressure environment, a male-dominated environment where, you know, the knives are out, basically, in that political arena. And I really admired her for being honest enough to say that there were occasions that she stood up in the House to give this big speech, and she thought, I haven't a clue what I'm going to talk about. It's completely gone, you know. And you know, that kind of made me feel a little bit better. Sometimes I'm on
Yes.
the radio thinking, what am I talking about again? I have no idea. And for someone like that to be honest enough to say, yeah, that happened to me, but also that it scared her a bit. And you know, really scared her. And I have another friend, Nadia, who's my colleague on Loose Women, who for like 2 or 3 years, and you know, so I think I've got early dementia. And I know it's a very serious disease and we shouldn't talk about it casually, but she genuinely thought there was something going wrong.
Many women
And she
do,
was
yeah.
fearful of it.
Yeah.
And actually, to be honest, I didn't connect with menopause then. I'm saying, Nadia, look, you're really busy. You've got a lot going on. You know, give yourself a break. You know, I was trying to make her feel better. But I hadn't made that link. I mean, Jane here saying brain fog is real. I mean, another one of the contributors who is the head teacher of
yeah,
performing school, you know, one of these women who's on it across everything. And she said occasions, you know, a parent would come in to talk about their child and she'd be looking at this parent thinking, I don't know how your child is, I don't know what their name is, and I don't know who you are either, but is smiling, you know, sort of like, doing very well. So I think it's really brave to do that.
Yeah,
and
but
Jane
interesting.
Lewis is a standout, I think.
Yeah, Jane
And
Lewis.
like
Yeah,
you said, her book.
yeah. She
Well,
just
Jane
Vagina.
really
She's a hero.
put her vagina out there for everybody,
She
right? I
did.
mean, I've got to know Jane over the last few years as well. And what she did was immensely brave, but so
Very.
powerful because now, I mean, even doctors' surgeries have the book in, they have her pamphlets, and women are actually being proactive about their vaginal health now. And it's just so amazing. And that was one of the things that I didn't understand at all. And in fact, I was in Scotland one year because I have family in Neilston in Glasgow, and I was going out for a run. And when I got back, I'd completely drenched myself. I'd peed my pants, and my kids were like, "Oh, look, Mum's peed her pants." And I was like, I didn't even realize that had happened. I didn't even know. And it was so, I was mortified. I even went and asked for help. I went to a pelvic floor physiotherapist. They never said this could be a hormonal issue. And then it went away and then it came back again. And then I realized it was sick with my cycle. I realized like my cycle was changing, but when I was near a period and my estrogen was as low as it was going to get, I'd start peeing myself. And then
I had something like that too. I would go running, and this was before I even had any idea that the menopause was about to hit me. And I would have to wear pads and for my running. And then it was only later when I actually went to the doctor, and the doctor was asking me about menopause symptoms, and she said, "What about incontinence?" And I was like, "Well, I haven't got it now, but I have had it." And I just thought, oh, I haven't done the Kegels enough at that point. I thought, terrible me, I haven't done my Kegels. And
by the way, that's Kegels over here. I'm just doing the translation. Yeah.
Or I was wondering if it's also vaginal, not vaginal.
I think we say vaginal, vagina, I don't know, yeah, it's tomato, isn't it? But we get it, yeah. But, you know, and again, that's one of those symptoms that we know has to be managed for the rest of your life. You can't ignore that. And Jane's very clear about that in her book. And then it's also one of those things that women don't want to talk about. So they even don't want to talk about it with their doctor. And we know it's a tiny percent of women that actually seek help. The majority just think, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to pee my pants, everyone else does, and they just put up with it, and it's not okay. And so yeah, that's why I'm like okay talking about mine too, even though, you know, I'm sure
Amanda, are you saying that, you know, a lot of women feel very you know, inhibited in talking about vaginal dryness? And that's kind of understandable, you know, it's very personal. But beyond that, and this again is something that's kind of occurred to me, a lot of the language that we use around the menopause is so pejorative, you know, in terms of common conversation. I mean, to be a menopausal woman, there's just this, you know, inference that you're kind of a bit past it. It's sometimes used as a casual insult. We talk about women being dried up, which is seen obviously as a very kind of negative thing. And so when we are seeing the menopause in such a negative way, then I think that also makes it very difficult for us to have the conversation, because who really does want to stand up and go, hey, I'm a menopausal woman? I mean, you might as well say, you know, that's it, my brain's gone, the body's gone south, nobody wants to shag me, excuse me for my language. But, you know, it does get like that. And again, one of our contributors, Vicky, said, and I thought it was great, that a lot of the language around menopausal women is the same as sort of mother-in-law jokes.
Yes, agreed, completely, yeah.
Funny, but not really very funny, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we've had that. Sure.
Our words matter for sure. The way we talk about things really matter. Yes, definitely. And so what is something that we'll finish this is the last question, then we'll open up the question to the floor. What is one of the positives that's come out of menopause for both of you? Like what's one of the gifts that menopause has given you?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do feel like, I don't know if it's just like something to do with what my feelings about being in the present, is that actually I'm really enjoying this phase, even though we've had this terrible year with COVID, more than almost any other that I have been through. And I think it's actually almost coming out of that really difficult phase, coming out of the really difficult stuff. And actually, it's like once you get the other side of it, and I'm not saying that all the symptoms go away or anything like that, but actually you just realize that, you know, I just had that feeling like I'm alive. I'm actually alive, and I'm going to go wild swimming, and I'm going to do these. I'm not on HRT, but, you know, I would consider it. But I, you know, I actually have, and the book helped me do it, actually. The book helped me see that there's a chapter on wisdom, and there's a few people there have talked about the menopause as this time where we can kind of go inside and reflect on our where we're at, but also our whole journeys to get here. And I really engaged with that.
There's a lot of growth happens, I agree,
yeah.
Right? And I think it's a little bit of that's a bit of a superpower to come out of the end of that. And we can do hard things, essentially, can't we? Yeah. Okay, what about you, Kaye? Yeah, we can do hard things, yeah.
I think for me, probably a bit of self-awareness. Because I've got this really weird thing and I'm not very proud of this. I've always found it really difficult to talk about my age, and I blame my dear departed mother, who would never tell anyone what her age was. She was always over 21.
That's what we used to say.
She wouldn't say anything else, and we all forgot what her age was, and she confused us deliberately. And I started to do the same thing. I just picked it up. Again, much to the amusement of my friends, who just thought I was a complete loser. And so I suppose this experience for me has made me kind of own it a little bit more, and be able to say, well, yeah, I am. I'm 58 years of age. I am menopausal / postmenopausal. What's your problem? You know, but I'm not saying that to the world. I'm saying it to myself. I'm saying that in the mirror. And so kind of owning that has probably been quite, you know, quite a relief for me in some ways, because who am I kidding? You know, if you're trying to kid yourself, then that's really pretty tragic. So I think I'm a bit more honest with myself now.
But that's where the hard work starts, always. It doesn't start with you trying to convince other people. It's always about trying to convince ourselves, always, right? So, I mean, you've done the hard work. And so that's like everything else is a bonus after that. That's what I think about those conversations. Okay, so guys in the chat function, well, guys and girls, we're going to open it up to some questions now, and feel free to just pop them in there, and Vicky, Kaye and I will just look at them for the next 10 minutes and try and answer as many as we can. And the one that we can start with is, how have your conversations with your significant others or husbands or partners gone? And, you know, were they understanding? Because it's challenging when we don't know what's going on. How can they be expected, you know, to know as well?
I mean, I definitely feel that prior to the book that I didn't really explore it so much with my husband. You know, it was not something that I actually found that, you know, I would mention it. I would say this is what was happening for me, but we didn't have like the bigger conversation. So it was actually the book that really helped me sort of feel that actually you know, this was, you know, it was not just my experience, it was also my work and everything that we could talk about.
Yeah. What about you, Kaye?
Well, interestingly, my youngest, my 13-year-old, sat and read sort of my little contribution, the foreword, and she was sitting in the room actually when she was reading it, and I was there, and she was just nodding away, and you know, she asked me a few questions about it, and then she just put it down and drifted off, and I thought, well, you know, that's quite a nice sort of gentle introduction to it. I mean, my partner Ian is, you know, it's not that he finds it difficult to talk about these things, but he's not a great talker, whether it's about his own health or aspects of my health, but not in a way that he'll be saying, I don't want to talk about that. And I noticed there's somebody saying that they're very open with friends and also their husband. I think that's a wonderful thing to be. And I mean, I am certainly very open with him, but I'm not going to force, I'm not going to sit him down and say, right, I'm going to tell you about my menopause and we're going to talk about this, and because he's not comfortable with these things. And so I don't know, maybe I am somebody else saying my husband isn't a talker either, so it's tricky sometimes. I don't know if I'm dodging the questions or not. I mean, we've got a very good relationship. I don't feel that he's in any way dismissing me or not taking me seriously, but he's just not that kind of guy. But I absolutely also know that if I went to him and I said, I'm really struggling with this, he'd be there 100%. And that works for us. And everyone's relationship has got a different dynamic.
That's exactly, I think, what you need to do is say, I'm not doing well, and this is probably why. And you'd be really surprised how helpful that is even for them, because I know I had 2 years of unanswered questions and symptoms where, you know, I didn't recognize myself. And so my partner, my husband, was like, what the hell is happening here? And just directly thought it was me getting ready to leave him, probably. You know, I didn't want to be around anyone. So the minute that I sort of said, you know, this is what's going on, it was like, oh, well, then we can do something about that then, you know. And so, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think in my experience, a lot of men that I speak to now actually really want to have the conversation. You know, I remember just not that long ago when we were actually allowed to go out and hang out with other people in the outdoors, having a conversation with this friend's ex-husband who just like wanted to talk all about the menopause, like just he wanted, you know, he was really totally up for it, and I just think sometimes you just need to put it out there, and everyone, even like my kids, my sons. So I've got sons, not daughters. So I don't have that same thing that I'm passing it on to my girls, but I feel like I can pass it on to my boys.
My boys know, and they know about it now. So they'll be ready for when, you know, they have girls or partners, or, you know, so I think it's really important. My husband has been upselling my book to all of his colleagues who are like CEOs or executives in companies. And one of the executives phoned him up and said, so 2 things, I read the Amanda's book and I'm doing her workouts in it. And 2, I think my wife's perimenopausal, so I'm going to give the book to her to read. And I thought that, well, there's a novelty. The guy knows before the woman. Somebody's asking about keto diet, Holly. And Holly, I'm not going to answer that on this interview, because I am actually interviewing 2 registered dietitians all about diet and health and menopause, and that's in 3 weeks' time. So, and we'll deal with that then when the experts can answer that. So, but yes, definitely consider reading Dr. Stacey Sims' book, which is called Raw. And yes, you need carbohydrates. I'll just say that there. Okay, Holly, thanks. Kaye and Vicky, what was the ultimate end goal of writing the book? What was what did you want readers to take away?
Yeah, there was like this about what did we want people to learn from the stories shared. I didn't actually have a thing that I really wanted them to. I just wanted them to be able to find themselves somewhere in the book, because, you know, we can read a story of one person and not find ourselves in there. But I thought if we had 42 stories, you're going to find yourself somewhere in there. And we've got a lot of diversity in there. We've got a non-binary person. We've got women who had lots of children, women who had no children, women who wanted children, didn't want them, women who had endometriosis, all these different experiences. So that's what I most wanted.
The diversity, yeah, because we know that some people are going to struggle more than others, for sure. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And what about you, Kaye?
Well, I mean, I really can only echo what Vicky says. That was absolutely the objective of the book, and because I suppose for myself, very selfishly, because as I say, I didn't feel that I was going through a terrible menopause. When I heard other people talking about their menopause, they tended to be much more dramatic stories, and I thought, well, I'll just keep my head down because I don't have a dramatic story to tell. But everyone does have a different experience, and exactly as Vicky says, although you might not read the book and say, okay, I'm a carbon copy of that particular person's experience, you'll think, well, yeah, I'm a bit of that, and I'm a bit of that, and I'm a bit of that, and I'm a bit of that. And so exactly as you put it, Vicky, you know, you'll find yourself a little bit in there, rather than, you know, just think, well, if that's menopause, that's not me, because that's not what I recognize. And then you feel kind of excluded from the conversation. So it was to make it a very inclusive conversation. I see a few people, Vicky, you've got a book to hand, haven't you? Because a few people are saying, can you show us the cover and all that?
It's a lovely lush cover.
It is. Even if you don't read it, it's lovely to hold and cuddle. It feels very, very nice.
Yeah, feels like a little
so it's
gift or something.
And it is available on Amazon, and it feels very nice. I have to say.
Yeah.
Oh, have we lost Amanda?
We lost, yeah. Is there another question that we could answer from that?
I don't know. I'll have... In terms of the health and fitness, I mean, obviously Amanda's the absolute expert on these things. But I guess, yes, I think I'm no health or fitness freak, but I do kind of watch my diet, not in terms of weight loss in any way, but in terms of not too much junk food. I'm not a junk food person. I'm largely veggie. I do try and make sure that I'm active, and I don't drink particularly much, probably less than I ever have. And I feel that helps. I suppose it helps in that it makes me feel better about myself, and that's obviously a positive thing. I mean, is it something that you, Vicky, are conscious of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm up and down about what I do about my diet, but I am a very big fan of exercises. The way, that if I don't go for a run or a walk or a swim or something, I will really struggle. There's a friend of mine had put on Twitter recently tips for the menopause, and one of hers was around sleeping, and what she recommended was a nice cup of cocoa before bed. And it was just such an indulgent thing, and so not the classic, like the good things that you should do, that I've actually adopted that recently. So that's, and
that reminds me of being a kid, a cup of Ovaltine before bed.
Yeah. I mean, so I do try and keep it low sugar though.
So ladies, I actually, for some reason, I'm having some issues over here, so I disappeared. But you probably already have shown your book, and I do want you to show it again, please, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a little giveaway. So here's the book, Vicky is holding it up there.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Now, I don't think we can get the book in the US because I've been trying and I'm really struggling, and so we're gonna see if we can right that wrong. Maybe it's available on Kindle, but it definitely is available in the UK. And so the giveaway that Vicky and Kaye are going to give right now is 3 of these books, but only if you've got access to a UK address. And I'm actually saying this because I know I've got people from the US on here that are British. You can send it to the mom, send it to your mum or dad at home. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and the first 3 to respond will get a copy of the book. Okay, and so I want you to use just one adjective to tell me how you would describe your menopausal journey. And my friend Tammy is going to help me out here. I can't play. Wow. Oh, there you go. So we have Jackie from Dorset. If you've won before on one of the giveaways, then I'm not going to let you win again. I'm going to be really mean about it because I want to give everyone a chance. So let's have a look. So we have you got those there, Tammy? Give me a nod if you've got them. Okay, that's great. Now I'm going to open it up for the floor to everywhere, because I've got mine in the UK and the US. And so for everybody in the rest of the world, answer that question now. So everybody after Alison, there's 2 copies of my book. So I have Beverly and Kelly. Okay, there we go. I'll try and remember them. My friend in the top corner there, Danny, is writing these down super quick for me. Okay, so we're good. So we have 5 books we just gave away then, and hopefully we've got them all recorded. I'm going to reach out to you. If you can drop me an email, either reply to one of the emails I've already sent you over the last few weeks, or drop me a line at Amanda at Fit and Chips. That should say Fit and Chips. I'll do that again, sorry. I love that you ladies did this book. I think it's so important. I think that what we've realized over time is the power of women talking, sharing their stories, building a community, and providing a safe space to be able to like just be open and be vulnerable. And I want to thank you for that, because if it wasn't for books like this, then I honestly don't think many women would actually seek help or, you know, try and make better choices with their health. So thank you for that.
Well, I mean, we have to say thanks to all the women who actually spoke to us, because they're the ones that really put themselves out there. And
yeah, absolutely. It's them that deserve the thanks.
And just also just the fact that, you know, you're using, people like UK are using, I'm just putting my email address in for the winners. I can't spell it right. People like UK that are using your platform to discuss this right now. So never in my wildest dreams did I think that menopause would be on the BBC, right? And look at that, you know, like it's crazy. And so yes, yet it is. My book was in one of the papers, the national papers. I'm like, how is like this even a world we live in? And I love it. I just wish it would ripple over more into the US. And it's, like I say, it's slow, but we usually follow the trend of Europe and the UK. So I'm hoping that happens too. But thank you both very much for joining us all today. It's been so great to chat. I'm really sorry that I kept losing Zoom. It sucks. It's not my fault. I blame Zoom. I don't know. I'll try and work it out for next week. But I'd just like to thank everyone for joining me. And I'd like you to know that next week, it's really a good tie into the conversation we had. So next Thursday at noon Central Time, I'm interviewing Dr. Susan Hardwick-Smith, whose book is called Sexually Woke. So she's going to stir up our loins for us. So there's that. That's great. So please join me then. And again, thank you all very much for joining us. Take care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.